Welcome back, everyone. So far, we've actually covered quite a bit of the diagram, almost more than half. This is where things get a little interesting because we've covered pretty much the main components that you can use in order to build the functionality of a system. But now we're going to start splitting hairs a little bit and talking about some of the abstractions. And the best way to do that is to discuss services. Talking about services is interesting because a lot of what we build are services. You've heard about services in microservice architecture, which we'll discuss a little later. But for now, let's understand how services fits into our overall diagram and architecture. So, web servers communicate with services. And generally speaking, services, because I've chosen this diagram, which looks like a nest, the reason why I want to show you this diagram is because it kind of looks like the actual overall diagram we have been looking at so far. Services encapsulate pretty much all of the components that we design in systems, but as a service. So let's talk more about what it is that a service is in the first place. So in order for us to understand this, let's go back to our Facebook example. When you think about these features that exist inside of Facebook, we can focus on some of them. The one I want you to think about right now is actually the profile or the user. When you log in as a user, what you are doing is you are authenticating yourself. Email sign-in, single sign-on, authentication through a third party like Google, or I guess in Facebook's case, you would not authenticate with Facebook, but you've all seen Facebook authentication before. Generally speaking, these are all authentication methods, and authentication itself is a service or entire feature in itself. So here we can see authentication. I'm just going to keep it separate for now. We'll discuss this more a little later. We already have become familiar with the newsfeed. So when we think about what we get as a personalized newsfeed, we've been discussing this feature quite extensively and using it as the main example when we explore our diagrams. So I want to keep newsfeed as another feature or another service. Finally, when you think about Facebook, a very popular feature that we commonly use in Facebook is the messaging application. Now, the messenger or the messaging feature is a feature that lives inside of Facebook or even inside of your iPhone. If you look at the apps, the messenger is even an entirely separate app. But as far as Facebook as a feature goes, it is a feature that lives within Facebook. So here we can say that we have Messenger as another feature. Finally, the last thing is on the side of Facebook, there tends to be a bunch of different communities you can join, maybe even the marketplace. There's all these different large built-in features that involve you interacting with other users. This I'm just going to group under communities as a feature. But here we have 4 of the main features that make Facebook what it is as Facebook. Generally speaking, we're familiar with using them all inside of one system. But what can happen is you can actually isolate each of these into their own independent system or service. And what we're going to discuss is primarily authentication and newsfeed as 2 different services to better understand what services are in the first place. Services are a little complicated speaking about them at a high-level abstract point of view. So I'm just going to give you a direct example and we can dive deep into what services are and how they fit into our overall system design. So now that we've at least taken a look at some of these examples, in the next video, we're going to talk about how we can actually design each of these individual services so that we get a better understanding of services altogether. So I'll see you in the next video.